I should have stopped when I reached that paragraph. I saw it clearly enough. A clause buried in the middle of polished corporate language, neat and unassuming. But I didn't stop. I signed anyway. The confirmation email arrived just after midnight. No flair, no congratulations splashed across the screen. Just a restrained subject line. Final approval. Global leadership rotation. I remember the room was dark except for my desk lamp, its light pulling over my keyboard. My heart stuttered, then picked up speed. I was 23. Business strategy concentration. Ranked near the top of my cohort. Most people had laughed when I said I was applying to this firm. Said they only hired legacies, monsters, or miracles. Apparently, I'd become the third. The onboarding materials were exhaustive. File after file, policies, disclosures, NDAs stacked like bricks. I skimmed more than I read, writing the high until one document slowed me down. A single section stowed apart. Compulsory cultural immersion assignment. Confidential placement. 6 weeks. I frowned, rereading it. The description beneath was vague to the point of meaninglessness. Language about refinement, adaptability, executive presence. I chalked it up to corporate theater, some curated retreat meant to polish future leadership candidates, workshops, exercises, maybe an overpriced lodge with too much yoga and forced vulnerability. I should have asked for clarification. I didn't because clarity felt less important than momentum. When I told my parents the next morning, my mother cried. My father clapped my shoulder like I'd crossed some invisible threshold. My sister sent me a message packed with crown emojis and a joke about corner offices. I said nothing about the immersion requirement. It didn't feel real yet. The HR call came the following Monday. The woman on the line spoke gently, with a careful neutrality. She explained I'd be departing for something called the Riverend Institute for Executive Socialization. It sounded like a resort. She instructed me to pack lightly. No phone use during the first phase. Grooming supplies would be provided. When I asked whether I'd be attending alone, she laughed softly. Of course not, she said. You'll be joining a very curated cohort. 3 days later, a black sedan arrived before sunrise. The city dissolved behind us. Then the suburbs. Then the roads narrowed, winding upward through forested hills. I lost service somewhere along the climb. The driver never spoke. Not once. When the gates appeared, they seemed almost unreal. Tall white iron, immaculate, bearing gold lettering that caught the morning light. Riverend Academy for Finishing and Presents. The car stopped. The driver waited only long enough for me to step out, then turned back the way we'd come. No farewell. The silence pressed in immediately. Beyond the gate stretched a long stone walkway framed by manicured hedges and blooming roses. I adjusted my jacket, tightened my grip on my bag, and started forward. That's when it hit me. Not fear. Exactly. Just a subtle chill. The sensation of crossing a boundary that wasn't meant to be temporary. The gates closed behind me with a sound that was wrong. Not loud, not dramatic, deliberate, like something locking into place. I turned instinctively, but the road was already empty. That was when I noticed them. 3 women stood just beyond the hedges watching. All dressed identically, navy blazers, pressed skirts, hair secured neatly at the nape. None of them spoke. None of them smiled. The grounds unfolded like a performance set. Every hedge trimmed. Every fountain timed. The building ahead was pale stone and dark wood, stately and severe. Its tall windows veiled in sheer curtains that glowed faintly from within. Inside, the scent struck first. Lavender, lemon polish, something sterile beneath it all. The space was hushed. Velvet benches lining the walls. Not a single misplaced object. Then she appeared. Tall, older, spine rigid with discipline. Silver hair pulled back tightly. Mr. Hale, she said, extending a gloved hand. I am the headmistress. Welcome to Riverend. We have been expecting you. Her tone carried no warmth, only certainty. She led me through the building briskly. No questions invited. No pauses allowed. This is the dining hall. Meals are taken in silence. Posture and internal awareness are emphasized. This wing handles grooming standards. Evaluations occur weekly. This salon is for vocal calibration and presence training. You will begin tomorrow. Every room we passed contained women in quiet formation, walking with books, balanced effortlessly, conversing in measured tones, lifting teacups in perfect synchronization. No one looked up. At the end of the corridor, she opened a door. The room was stark. A narrow bed, a wardrobe, a desk, pale wood and white walls, no mirror, no visible outlets. Your materials are provided, she said. Uniform fitting begins at 0700. Morning protocol starts at 0630. Your phone will be collected shortly. I blinked. For your benefit, she added calmly. You are here for evaluative immersion. Full separation is required. Then, as if sealing it, we expect excellence, not obedience. Remember the distinction. She left without another word. I stood there holding my bag, suddenly aware of how useless it felt. I wanted to text someone, anyone, but the absence of signal made the urge pointless. That night at dinner, the hall was filled with women seated in flawless alignment. Every movement synchronized, every bite measured, no conversation. I looked around the table and felt the weight of it all. Not just that I was the only man, but that everyone else already seemed to understand the rules. As I shifted in my chair, a voice murmured beside me, low and precise. Your body is carrying tension. I hated how accurate it was. The buzzer sounded the next morning at exactly 5:58 a.m. No melody, no warning, just a sharp, commanding tone that snapped me awake. The room was unchanged, still immaculate, still unfamiliar, still without a clock, a mirror, or my phone. And for the first time since signing that contract, I understood something with painful clarity. Whatever Riveran was, it wasn't designed for hesitation, and I was already inside. The uniform appeared without announcement. When I opened my door just after dawn, it was already waiting, hung neatly on the brass hook across the hall. A slate gray tunic shaped close through the torso, tapered trousers with a sharp crease, and slippers so light they barely registered as footwear. No tags, no pockets, nothing extraneous. By 6:30, we were assembled in the solarium. Tall windows poured early sunlight across the floor, turning the polished wood almost gold. 12 women stood evenly spaced in a line. I stood among them, unmistakably not blended in. The head mistress moved slowly down the row, clipboard tucked against her side. She stopped in front of each person just long enough to notice what others would miss. She halted at me. Wrists. I raised my hands, unsure. Her eyes dropped briefly. Nails require refinement. Correct. And report at 1600. I had no idea what report meant in this context. I nodded anyway. Training began immediately after. We were placed against a mirrored wall, instructed to align ourselves, heels touching, spine lengthened, shoulders rolled back, but not rigid, chin level, jaw relaxed. I shifted, then shifted again. Each time I thought I'd found it, a voice cut in with another adjustment. And then she was behind me. I didn't hear her approach. I only felt her hands, firm, unyielding, settle on my shoulders. Her grip wasn't aggressive, just precise. Inescapable. You are bracing, she said near my ear. Your body is fighting for dominance. Her voice was even almost conversational. That instinct will not serve you here. Next came walking exercises. 1 step per breath. Heel first. Weight forward. No stiffness. No swagger. Arms relaxed. Barely moving. Eyes lifted. Never searching. I struggled. My pace was wrong. My shoulders betrayed me. Every circuit ended in correction. Each note was delivered softly, but together they wore me down faster than shouting ever could. Voice training followed. We stood in sound booths facing our own reflections. Microphones tracked our pitch. Monitors displayed the fluctuations in unforgiving lines. We were told to repeat phrases, not louder, not softer, but warmer, measured, inviting. Please take your time. I'd be happy to assist. Let me show you. I barely recognized my own voice. All I could hear was tension hiding in the pauses. The others adapted seamlessly. They listened, adjusted, flowed forward without resistance. I didn't. By evening, my body acted in unfamiliar ways. My throat burned. My skin felt overstimulated from unfamiliar cleansers and lotions. My fingernails, filed, buffed, faintly gleaming, rested against the desk like they belonged to someone more careful than me. I caught my reflection in the window glass. Upright posture, relaxed mouth, exhausted eyes. Close enough to be convincing, far enough to be unsettling. I told myself I would bend just enough to survive the program. That was the plan. But the form waiting on my bed told a different story. A clipboard grooming assessment week 1. 12 criteria. Most already marked complete. Then my eyes locked onto item 7. Complete body hair, removal required. No exemptions. Inspection scheduled. The phrasing was neutral. Administrative, as if it belonged beside hydration tracking or collar alignment. That afternoon, I was escorted to the grooming wing, white tile, stainless drawers labeled with unsettling precision. The headmistress handed me a folded towel. Inside were razors, gel warm to skin temperature, exfoliating pads, and a vial of lightly scented serum. Uniformity and hygiene, she said calmly. All participants comply. She paused. If you decline, dismissal procedures can begin immediately. There was no threat in her tone. No pressure, which somehow made it worse. I was assigned a private stall, soft lighting, no sound except the quiet ventilation. I turned the mirror away. I worked slowly, carefully. Chest first, then arms, then legs, then the places where hesitation lingered longest. With every pass, something more than hair disappeared. It felt deliberate, intentional. When I finished, the water rinsed over skin that felt too exposed, too responsive. The towel clung in ways it hadn't before. Even the tunic whispered against me when I dressed. I avoided reflections for the rest of the day. But my body betrayed me constantly. The way fabric slid over skin, the way air touched my neck, the way crossing my legs felt newly conspicuous. During inspection that evening, the assistant nodded once. "Acceptable," she said. "You'll acclimate." I wasn't sure what acclimating meant anymore. The next change arrived, without warning. A garment bag hung in my room. Navy structured, unmistakably shaped, not sharp like a suit, curved, intentional. Inside, a tailored blazer drawn in at the waist, a narrow skirt, a pleated blouse, tights, and a brief note. Updated presentation standard. Effective immediately. At breakfast, I noticed everyone else had already transitioned. The shift was seamless. Blazers, skirts, polished shoes, hair restrained, faces subtly finished. The room moved as one. I hadn't. The headmistress stopped me in the corridor. "You are improperly dressed," she said evenly. I tried to keep my voice steady. "This attire isn't designed for men." She regarded me without blinking. "The protocol does not acknowledge gender," she replied. "Only symmetry." Then quietly, "If you require exception, this placement may no longer be suitable." Back in my room, the uniform lay arranged on the bed. I paced, delayed, argued silently. Eventually, I changed. The tights resisted. The skirt defined too much. The blouse fastened opposite what my hands expected. The blazer drew my waist inward, reshaping my silhouette. None of it felt like a parody. That was the most disturbing part. When I finally faced the mirror, my breath caught, not because the reflection was absurd, but because it wasn't. The figure staring back at me was composed, structured, convincing, and unmistakably not who I'd walked in as. My torso looked narrower than I remembered. My legs, longer, almost unfamiliar. My shoulders no longer squared themselves outward. They sloped, relaxed. Even standing still required adjustment. A subtle recalibration, just to stay upright. I gripped the edge of the mirror and breathed, barely audible. What are they turning me into? The shoes weren't impossible, just destabilizing enough to demand attention. Not tall, not dramatic if precise enough to shift my center, tilt my pelvis forward, coax my spine into alignment without meaning to. My gait smoothed out. My steps shortened. My balance improved. When I entered the afternoon etiquette lecture, no one reacted. No pause, no glances, no flicker of surprise. I blended. That was worse than mockery, Worse than confrontation. I wanted someone, anyone, to break the illusion, to remind me this wasn't ordinary. But the room absorbed me like I'd always belonged there. That night, I folded the uniform exactly as instructed. Sharp creases, careful edges. Even after I changed, the sensation of the fabric lingered on my skin. Phantom pressure, like a hand that had rested there too long. A thought kept looping. Unwanted and persistent. If this feels easier tomorrow, what does that say about me? Your expression is too guarded. The instructor murmured the next day, studying my face. I didn't know whether to laugh or break down. By the second week, the word student no longer fit. We were managed, observed, adjusted. The schedule tightened. Silence periods lengthened. Grooming expanded. Journaling deepened into guided reflection. Posture checks became nightly rituals. I waited for rebellion, for outrage, some collective snapping point. Instead, everyone grew quieter, not defeated, compressed, like fabric folded carefully into a shape we hadn't chosen, but had stopped unfolding. The facial studio came next. They didn't call it a classroom. They called it a suite. Soft light, velvet chairs, glass shelving lined with immaculate bottles and brushes too elegant to feel instructional. The woman who greeted us spoke gently, sincerely. Today we address presence calibration. Her kindness unsettled me more than severity ever could. She stood behind me, lifting my chin with 2 fingers. Tension here, she said, brushing beneath my jaw. And here, smoothing the crease between my brows. You're still bracing. I wanted to deny it. I didn't because she was right. They began with skincare. Subtle, methodical exfoliation, toning, calming serums. Brows cleaned, not reshaped, just clarified. She explained how angles influence trust, how symmetry reduced perceived resistance. Behavioral science, disguised as cosmetics. I hated how compelling it sounded. Then makeup, minimal, corrective, almost invisible. A sponge tapped softly against my cheek, her breath steady, unhurried. The intimacy disarmed me more than the process itself. When she turned the chair toward the mirror, my stomach dropped. The face looking back wasn't feminine. Not exactly, but it wasn't mine anymore. Refined, softer, like something had been uncovered rather than added. And the most unsettling part was how naturally it fit, as if layers I'd never known where there had simply been cleared away. After that, my movements shifted, not consciously, not performative. I sat differently, blinked slower, crossed my ankles without thinking. My voice softened at the ends of sentences, and halfway through the next seminar, I realized I hadn't tugged at my sleeves once. That nervous habit, my tail, it was gone. That night, I washed my face clean, but the unfamiliarity lingered. I stared longer than I meant to, not frightened, curious. That terrified me, because for the first time, resistance felt optional. They measured my head midweek. No explanation, just a form labeled cranial standardization review. A woman wrapped a measuring tape around my scalp, recording angles and contours. I joked about helmets. She didn't smile. Silhouette consistency is essential, she said. That afternoon, we entered the visual conditioning chamber. Mirrors on every wall. Chairs arranged in a curve. Wigs displayed like instruments. Neutrals only. Corporate. Controlled. No drama. Hair symmetry reduces cognitive noise. Head mistress Vale explained. Standardization sharpens presence. They selected mine without discussion. Chestnut shoulder length. Clean part. The mesh cap hugged my scalp. The wig settled lightly. Disturbingly real. It moved when I turned. Brushed my cheeks when I blinked. I kept touching it, not because I liked it, because I couldn't believe it stayed. In the mirror, fully arranged, I didn't look like a woman. I looked edited. Voice training intensified. Scripts became dialogues. Playback analysis mapped tension and warmth. The voice that came back through the speakers was mine, technically, but stripped of edges, rounded, calm. I began practicing alone, catching myself mid-sentence, smoothing vowels, pausing intentionally. It leaked into everything. By week's end, I stopped removing the wig at night. Not from attachment, from fatigue. It was easier to remain assembled than to dismantle myself daily. One evening, I passed a mirror in the hall and paused. Relaxed shoulders, perfect uniform, hair neat, lips curved slightly from an unfinished thought. I didn't feel horror. I felt distance. The heels arrived in an envelope. Footwear progression required. Black closed-toe 3 in uniform, not ornamental, in the atrium marble beneath us. Veil spoke evenly. You walk with residual resistance. These will correct it. The shoes fit perfectly. Standing was immediate recalibration. Walking was negotiation. The first misstep sent me into the wall. No laughter, just polite silence. We walked again and again. Eventually, it wasn't about appearance. It was survival. Knees soft, hips aligned, shoulders released. Later came the outing. A town walk, presence exposure. I almost asked for lower shoes. The words never left my mouth. We moved together, silent, composed. The wind lifted my hair slightly. Skirt brushed my legs. People noticed. They didn't react. And I understood then. Whatever they saw, they couldn't categorize it enough to object. Back in my room, removing the heels, I felt something unexpected. Pride. Not in obedience, but in endurance. I hadn't broken. The truth surfaced by accident. I returned after curfew for a forgotten journal and overheard voices. Adaptation exceeded projections. Overwrite stable by week 4. He didn't even hesitate at heel integration. Public reintegration approved. Subject overwrite protocol. They weren't shaping me. They were replacing me. I confronted Vale the next morning. This was programming, I said. She didn't deny it. You were selected, she replied. Your resistance profile made you ideal for proving what I demanded. That identity is trained, not innate. That night, I sat awake, heels beneath the chair, wig on the dresser, hands folded in my lap, nails perfect, skin unfamiliar. The uniform waited, and the realization came, slow and devastating. They didn't just change me. They taught me how to keep doing it. Departure was quiet. A schedule, a note. Reintegration begins with recognition. What you keep is your choice. I studied myself one last time. The reflection felt complete, not erased, not stolen, different. I tried to remember who I'd been at the gate weeks ago. The image refused to sharpen. As the gates opened, I stepped forward alone, not ending anything, choosing something.